Hello aspirants, welcome back to Vajirao and Reddy Institute online platform. I am Gogula Rajashekar. In this series of videos, we are discussing approach to mains answer writing. In the past session, we have discussed the general approach towards the mains answer writing, and we have also taken questions from GS paper 1, and we discussed the structure of it, the content of it, and how to approach and present it. In today's session, we are going to take GS paper 2, various subjects from it, and we are going to discuss the same. So let us begin. Let us look at the question here. The question is right of movement and residence. Right of movement and residence throughout the territory of India are freely available to Indian citizens, but these rights are not absolute. It's a statement question on which we need to comment. The question was asked in 2022 for 10 marks and 150 words is the word limit that we have, in which we have to write our answer. So as usual, let us look at the approach to this question and the structure of it. See, the structure of the question, as we have discussed, it has three components: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So let us break it down, this question, into parts. One, the statement is given, under which it is stating that the right of movement and residence throughout the territory of India is freely available to Indian citizens, but it is not absolute. This is the statement. And what is the tail word or the directive word that we have? Comment. We just have to comment on it. So here, while commenting, what we do, we will justify that through the constitutional provisions, the citizens of India have right to freedom with respect to movement and residence in India, and at the same time we will also give some of the restrictions that are placed on these particular rights. Simple. So in the introduction, we will simply begin by writing this right to freedom of movement and residence in India and constitutional articles pertaining to it, the part of the constitution, everything related to it. Then in the body, we will be mainly going for this comment. And what are the reasonable restriction grounds on which this freedom of movement and residence is restricted, making them not absolute. That is the core demand of it. Then finally, we will conclude emphasizing why such reasonable restrictions are placed and the importance of this freedom of movement and residence. Alright, that is the structure of it. Let us begin. Let us look at the model answer of it. See, as usual, in the introduction, we will be going with either definition or the portions of the articles that are dealing with right to freedom of movement and residence. See, all citizens of India have the right to freedom of movement and residence throughout the territory of India, and it is enshrined in the fundamental rights under Part 3, particularly the Article 19(1)(d) and 19(1)(e) deal with them. One deals with the movement, another one deals with the residence. So this is the introduction where we are providing the information and the articles related to these freedom of movement and residence. Then we are connecting it towards that or justifying it, the rights are available to the Indian citizens. So let us look at that. This is where we are connecting it. However, see, it is a privilege right. See, fundamental rights are divided into two types. One is the rights which are available to all, and the other one like Article 19, 29, 30, 16, 15, 16, 19, 29, 30. These are all only available to citizens of India. They are privilege rights. So it is one of the privilege right available to citizens of India exclusively. However, there are some restrictions on them. there are reasonable restrictions under Article 19 Clause 5, such grounds are being mentioned. That is what we will highlight it. See, citation of the articles of the Constitution is very important. So practice it, remember those articles here. Now, what are the grounds on which we can place some reasonable restrictions? Number one, general public interest. General public interest and public morals and maintenance of the public order. Anything in the larger interest of the public. You can place some reasonable restrictions. Later we will see some of the examples as well. The second one is protection of the rights of the scheduled tribes. Scheduled tribe people, they have a distinct way of life, cultures and customs, and we need to protect them, preserve them. That is the reason why there is again restriction on movement and residence, particularly in the scheduled tribes areas. Now, see, the following are some of the examples. Now we need to justify the examples on these two grounds. What are the reasonable restrictions that are placed? Let us begin. Let us look at those examples. First, the restrictions on freedom of movement. Number one, to maintain the public order, say the Gunda Act, it prevents movement of criminals, so that the criminal activities does not spread to other locations and it does not become a challenge to the law and order problem, right? That is the first. Second example, particularly in the scheduled tribal areas, in order to protect their own culture, distinctive culture, customs and traditions, we place certain restrictions. What are the restrictions? For example, you know about sentinel tribes. They are completely isolated tribes. So there is no physical contact with them from the outside world. So that is one example you can provide. And entering into them is also prohibited by the government. Plus, in the northeastern region, there are many tribal populations. And to visit such states, you need ILP, Inner Line Permit. Same goes for your Lakshadweep as well. So these are all some of the restrictions. Even Indian citizens wants to visit it, they need permission. They need to take Inner Line Permit. Understood? So this is second. Third, see, protecting the public health and preventing epidemics or pandemics. You know all about COVID-19. During the times of COVID-19, there was a nationwide lockdown preventing the people to move from one location to another location on health grounds, so that this infectious disease is not spreading. That is another example. Plus, on public health, see, even Honorable High Court has restricted the movement of prostitutes on the health grounds and public morale. So this is another example, you can cite it. So these are all some of the examples which are placed on the, or which are placed restrictions on the movement of the people. Similarly, let us look at the restrictions that are placed on the residence, freedom of residence. See, number one, settlement in the tribal areas, including acquiring the land there, is prohibited. So land alienation can happen in the tribal areas, that's the reason. Plus, outsiders cannot reside in particularly scheduled areas like the ones which are dealing with 6th schedule, even in 5th schedule also such restrictions are placed. Second, the Supreme Court held that certain areas can be banned for certain kinds of persons like prostitutes, again on the health ground, and habitual offenders. Again same, public order is the reason behind it. So as a result of it, the free residence of these people has been restricted to only some areas. And Guwahati High Court restricted residence and settlement of citizens in the premises of ST to protect them from the outside influence, again to safeguard their distinctive culture. So these are all some of the examples showing the restrictions on freedom of movement. Now, through this, what we have done, we have justified the statement, given the examples, we have also provided the constitutional provisions both for the freedom of movement and residence and reasonable restriction on the grounds of it. Now we need to conclude this answer. Again, I told you conclusion should be in a highly optimistic manner. So how are we concluding it? See, simply from the above examples, it is clear that right to freedom of movement and residence are not absolute. This is what we need to justify in the question, because there are reasonable restrictions on it. Full stop. Now continuation, look at this continuation, how we are going about it. However, promotion of unity, integrity and fraternity, which are prime ideals in our preamble as well, aspirations of the constitution as well. Now we are bringing them and connecting it. So for unity of the nation, integrity and fraternity, as mentioned in the preamble and constitution, the free movement and residence of the people is needed. So it is needed. So these restrictions, if you put without any valid ground, then they might harm these three components: unity, integrity and fraternity. That is the reason why we finally conclude saying, hence the restrictions must be on a reasonable or valid grounds. They cannot be arbitrary, because the freedom of movement and residence should be there in order to integrate the nation and ensure unity of the nation. This is how we can conclude it. So we have written it like 150 votes, and I have given more examples. You can cut short in order to make it even shorter, so that you can write it in 150 votes. So this is one question from polity section, where we have cited even the constitutional articles, schedules and some of the judgments as well. See, here I did not specifically mention the name of the judgment. Simply only one reason is why to remember all this when you know the core concept of it, what is the outcome of the judgment. If you can remember the judgment and write it, that is also very good. Now let us move on to another question from the same paper, but the question is from international relations, because in your GS paper 2 we have polity, constitution, international relations, governance and social justice. So second question that we are taking from this paper is international relations, and the question was asked in 2021. Even now it is highly relevant because of the contemporary events. I thought of like taking G20, but let the summit happen, then we will discuss about it. Now the question is critically examine. See, the directive word is here, critically examine. So as I told you, analysis, examination, it should be like very elaborative on the positive sides, negative sides, and whatever that has been asked has to be elaborated, taking pros, cons or arguments in favor or against everything, and then we will be going for a balanced conclusion, right? So critically examine what the aims and objectives of SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Full stop. What importance does it hold for India? So question is very simple. The demand of the question is very clear. What we need to critically analyze: number one, the aims of it, the objectives of it, and finally what we need to write, the importance of SCO for India. You know, India became member of it in 2017 along with Pakistan, right? On these lines we will be discussing it. Now it was asked in 2021 for 15 marks, and we have to write it in 250 votes. Like I told you, 250 votes means 3 pages that we get, predetermined space. We need to curate our content within these pages. Let us look at the model answer, and before going into it, let us look at the structure of it, our approach of it. See, in the introduction what we will write. Here the focus is on this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So we will be looking at it. We will simply write little bit about SCO and its main aims and objectives. Now aims and objectives, it connects with the body of the question, the main demand of it. Then in the main demand we will be doing the critical examination of these aims and objectives. That is what is being asked here. Critically examine aims and the objectives. Then the second portion of it, the importance it hold for India. That is what we will be writing it. Its importance for India. Then finally in the conclusion, we will be concluding by highlighting its potential for the economy, security, policy making, investments, bilateral trade or multilateral trade, connectivity, energy security, etc., particularly for India. Focus should be the importance of SCO for India. So that's how we will go about it. And finally concluded what are the more potentials and avenues. Alright, let us look at the model answer. First, in the introduction, like I told you, what we are going to write? We are going to write about the organization. See, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an intergovernmental organization found in Shanghai with objectives of political, economic and security cooperation between the member nations. And India became permanent member of it in 2017. That's it. Introduction about the organization and inducting of India into the organization as a permanent member. Simple. Now, in the presentation, if you remember the nations, all the permanent members, you can add them in the map. You simply draw the member nations, or simply you can even draw the schematic of this entire thing, centering India into it. Okay. There you can put what are the members. See, recently Iran has also become member. You can highlight that as well. So present it, and if you remember any names, you can write it. The earlier 5, then addition of the other 3. Now going further, see, main is aims and objectives. That's where we'll simply list out what are the main aims and objectives. Strengthening the relations between the member states by deepening political, security and economic cooperation. First aim. Second, to strive for joint cooperation between the member nations for what? For countering terrorism, extremism and separatism. This is another one. Next, it also aims to move towards developing a democratic and equitable international political order. This is third objective. You can find these aims and objectives even if you visit the SCO's official website. Within their vision and mission, you can find these objectives and aims. Next, to ensure the joint efforts in maintaining peace, security, stability in the region. This is another one. Finally, to deepen the engagements in the field of trade and commerce, transport, tourism, environment, cultural linkages, education, research and technology, etc. Like all other spheres where we can collaborate and we can cooperate, we can jointly develop some things. So that's what the another focus of it. Now after simply, like this is enumeration or listing out, simply list out the aims of it. Now we will be entering into the core body of it. So for introduction and what is being asked, then connection to the body, now we are entering into the body, that is critical analysis of it. Critical analysis of the aims and objectives. So let us look at this. First, we have seen the aims and objectives. Now let us look at the critical analysis of with number 1, there is a conflicting interest. Where we have conflicting interest? Number 1, India and Pakistan, Russia, China. See, these 4 groups at various fronts we have conflicts. Between India and Pakistan there is a conflict. Border disputes are there, other conflicts are there. And India and Russia, on a diplomatic level we have conflict, particularly with respect to the individual bilateral relations that we are having. Russia is not so happy, India having good relations with USA. So that balancing is again one of the conflicting points. Again, India and China has conflicting interests. How? The trade, border disputes and other things. We know that, we have seen it in international relations. Then see, Russia and Pakistan's growing relations is also affecting India's interests. This is another one. So you don't have to elaborate, I am just explaining it. So there are conflicting interests. These relations, they created a complex matrix of diverging and conflicting interests. For example, different interests with respect to Taliban rise or Taliban regime in Afghanistan. First. Second, see, when you have such conflicting interest, you cannot go and develop your aims and objectives in a coherent manner. Next, leaders not taking lead. For example, China's checkbook and wolf warrior diplomacy, human rights violations, re-education camps, Hong Kong issue, etc. All of them, they raise question on Chinese commitments towards its aims and objectives. And of course, the entire organization mooted and leaded by China, you can say. That's the second one. Next, vested interest. Each of the member nation has their own vested interest. For example, take China. Its main interest is economic integration by spreading the connectivity. It has BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, One Belt, One Road Initiative, also different economic corridors including CPEC, China, okay, we will discuss it later, China, Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is going through the disputed region. This is another conflicting point. And vested interest, as I told you, economic cooperation, that is the main motive of China. Next, terror financing and support. See, there are countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, even Afghanistan now politically ruled by Taliban. So they are being branded as terrorist organization in many countries, not just in India. So this is another issue. So the thing that we wanted to fight as an objective or aim, SCO wants to fight against the terrorism. But there are issues where the state sponsorship of the terrorism is there. So that is again a conflicting point, a critical point of it. Then comes limited developmental cooperation between SCO members during particularly COVID times. So these are all some of the critical points which are undermining or which are jeopardizing the broader aims and objectives of the organization. So you can simply do the critical analysis and point out all these. Now moving on to the next segment of it, its importance for India. So this is where we have to put a connector. Despite above shortcomings or critical points, still SCO has the following importance for India. Then you can begin this. Let us look at the areas of interest. Number one, SCO is part of India's stated policy of pursuing multi-alignments. Like now, there must be a multipolar world setup. For that particular reason, now in this SCO, we have very big players like China, Russia, India, all of them are global players. So that can help us in bringing these multi-alignments and strategic autonomy. Like the world order not driven by one or two countries. This is the first point, and in which India can become a leader. Already we are leading it on many fronts. Second, the challenges of terrorism, radicalism, extremism, instability, all of them they pose grave threat to Indian sovereignty and integrity, and SCO has this aim or objective to counter that terrorism, extremism, money laundering, etc. So that's where the counter-terrorism body, the name of the body is Regional Anti-Terror Structure. It may be useful for us in countering terrorism. So second advantage. Third use is for India, SCO allows deepening its strategic reach, particularly Central Asian countries, which are energy resources rich, and India is it's hungry for those resources. We have been trying to develop alternative routes to get to those regions and get those energy resources in order to ensure energy security for India. So accessing them, deepening the relations with them will definitely ensure our energy security. This is another point where it will be helpful us. Mineral and energy resources can be accessed. And India's presence in SCO will also help India's aim to link itself to the larger Eurasian and Europe via, say, international north-south corridor, transit corridor. Say it is connecting using your already well established networks. Being a member of it, you can connect these locations. Like this is international north-south transit corridor which will be connecting till Mumbai. So we can take the advantage of it. We can better, like we can enhance our relations, particularly in the sphere of trade and commerce. Another advantage. Apart from that, SCO membership will also help India, which is currently boxed in the South Asian region. And we have different policies like Act East, West policies, and this will also provide us another avenue where we can spread our arms to another region, particularly Central Asian region, from there extending up to Europe as well. So this is another one. Plus, it can also help us become a major pan-Asian player. Plus, it can also give us a ground to discuss various disputes with the member nations. Like SCO summits, we can discuss the disputes with, let's say, China, Pakistan, even Afghanistan through this mediation. So all of them are going to be advantageous points for us. So it can play a vital role in deepening people-to-people connection through cooperation in the field of education, medicine, tourism, health, etc. So these are all the prospecting areas of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, towards the conclusion, like I told you, we need to provide a balanced one because we have done the critical analysis, then we have provided the prospects of SCO for India. Now, after giving the prospects, our conclusion should be in a positive, optimistic way. Let's look at it. So, India's relations with other countries in SCO have enormous potential. This is where we are saying there is a huge scope for further developments. So, enormous potential for enhancing our economic development, our energy security as well as the physical security, and the policy making, investments, particularly the FDI, bilateral investments, and trade, connectivity, the physical connectivity as well as you can talk about digital connectivity as well, energy security and capacity building, etc. So there is a huge potential. However, there is a catch. What is that catch? However, India's benefits from the SCO will be limited due to the role of China and Pakistan in the organization with which we have better relations. So that's where our diplomacy, our strategy should come into picture. Like use the venue, use the organization, at the same time also pitch for bilaterally enhancing the relations with each and every individual country, like what we are doing with Russia, right? The above said positive outcomes will depend upon how India's diplomacy, this is what I was emphasizing or highlighting, how diplomatically we use this ground in order to develop or deepen our relations with those countries. That's going to determine our enhancing potential in here. Alright, this is how we are going to conclude it. So this is all about this particular question, and with that in GS paper 2 also we have discussed one question from your polity section, one question from your international relations. So that's it for this particular session. I hope you enjoyed it. On these lines, start practicing answer writing. Initially you may take simple questions, do the structuring of it, understand it, then gather the content and put it on the paper, bring it to me or any other faculty or your mentor, get it evaluated, take the feedback and work upon the feedback to improve your answers. So unless you write, you can't improve, so writing is the key here. That's it for this. See you in the next session with another topic from GS paper 3. So far GS paper 1, 2 are done. We will take it up GS paper 3 and discuss questions from various sections. Thank you very much for tuning. See you in the next session with another topic. Bye everyone.